Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G. And I'm here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on WEMS Radio Live, bringing you conversations with very special guests. My guests, they come from all walks of life and they have very different perspectives on things like love, on things like life. And we also talk about spirituality. We talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does spirituality work in your life moment by moment, day by day? We want to take the mystery out of it. We want to talk about it from the perspective of it can support you. And I always talk about the spiritual toolkit and what practices are in the spiritual toolkit to support you. So tonight we like to leave you inspired. We like to leave you with resources. We like for you to know that we are here to support you in just living your best life. That's my goal, is finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. I can be found also every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta with inspirational quotes and things to just help you get through your day or even through your week. So check me out. You can also subscribe to my YouTube page as Reverend Grenetta Mason. So tonight I have a really special guest, Andrea Mancuso. Andrea is the founder and the CEO of Intentional Healing and Wellness. She's also the host of the V Spot podcast. I'm excited to have Andrea here today. Hey, Andrea, come on in and join us.
Hi, hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Reverend G, for inviting me. I'm exceptionally grateful to be here with you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And it's been a long time coming. It's great to see you in this way.
Yes. So, yeah, I guess I was trying to think of the first thing that we would talk about. And one of the things that I find fascinating and great is that you are creative. We talk about all the other the psychology, the intention, setting the intentions and the wellness, but you're also a creative. So I'd like to just start there and talk
Yeah.
about how you express your creativity, right? And how does it support you?
Yeah. Excuse me. So creativity. I would say the first thing that comes to my mind is photography.
Hmm.
I love, getting lost in my own city. I am in Brooklyn, New York. I'm sure you could hear it in my accents for those of you listening. And I am someone who loves to, really roam around with sometimes no destination in mind, to be with the city and experience it, in all different ways. And so I'll lots of times do spontaneous visits to different streets and different areas that I'm not familiar with, all to be able to capture and photograph. I find it to be very therapeutic.
Hmm.
And it is one of the ways that I am able to express myself. I
Hmm.
would say the other two things that come up with creativity is music. I don't create music, but I am someone who is able to tap into my creative side
Hmm.
when I am listening to music. And so, I'm very much inspired by music. And for sure, it's another practice of mine that I carve out time, to be with.
Hmm.
And writing.
Hmm.
Writing is another, I would say writing is probably one of the ways in which I've connected more recently, reconnected, I should say.
Hmm.
So love writing and, the like storytelling, sharing who I
Yeah.
am.
Mhm.
Those
I
three
was
things are
trying to
my
say,
creatives.
yeah, the writing. Are you writing for others or for yourself, or are you sharing it? And yeah, you say you just got back into it.
Yeah, I would say both. I would say
Mhm,
it is a practice that I definitely do for myself.
mhm,
I am in the habit of daily writing. So I
mhm,
have a therapeutic background. My master's degree is in therapeutic interventions, practiced as a school psychologist for
mhm,
14 years.
mhm,
And one of the things that I offer, to the people that I've worked with,
mhm,
and for myself is really using writing as like a cathartic experience. And so
mhm,
very much about the daily practice of writing to share, my feelings, to sort of let out as a means of getting it out. Because, at any given point, we have so much
mhm,
that we are holding in our minds. So
mhm,
writing is very much a tool designed to unpack some of the feelings.
mhm,
And then writing, more recently started the V Spot podcast and
mhm,
got back into, sort of drafting out my ideas. And so I would say in that way, I've been able to share my writing, you know, by
mhm,
way
yeah,
of a podcast more recently.
mhm. Talk
Yeah.
about it's so interesting you say the B spot, and there's so many images that could come to your mind about what
Yeah, right.
it's right. It could be
About what it means, right?
anything, right? So
Yep.
then it causes you then to be curious, right? So
Totally.
about what it is. So it's pretty cool that it's just the B spot, right? And then podcasts, right? So talk
Yeah.
about it. Tell us what it is, and you
Yeah, for
started
sure.
it. It's
So
recent.
yeah, I
Mhm,
have released 6 episodes so far. So every
mhm,
Wednesday I release an episode.
mhm,
This Wednesday will be episode 7. And I'm
mhm,
so happy. Thank you for saying what you just said about the curiosity factor, because it was very purposeful. I played around with the title for quite some time,
mhm,
and I was thinking, I've been hosting conscious conversations
mhm,
since the pandemic started in
mhm,
Zoom spaces on Instagram. And so I was thinking about calling it that, but it's the premise of it is vulnerability. And so,
mhm,
I just landed on the V spot because, I hosted a couple of events throughout the pandemic, Zoom events, panel events, and entitled them the V spot, where
mhm,
guests, the panelists were not aware of the questions and
mm,
they only knew of the topic,
mhm,
and agreed to participate in the event to share of themselves. And so i I pretty much use Brene Brown. I'm very much influenced by her
mm,
work. I love
mhm,
her work. And she
mhm,
speaks of vulnerability as having 3 components:
mhm,
risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And
mm,
so that's the essence of the V spot. It's
mhm,
a place that it's a space that I created to share of myself, in a way that I haven't so far. And
mhm,
when I have guests join me, I don't tell them the questions ahead of time. And the invitation is to really, share of themselves in a way that we can, create individual and collective healing. And so it's been super exciting. It's been, you know, it's been a journey. It's been an unexpected healing journey. You okay?
Okay. For you and probably for your guests, right? The idea, because as I think about your title of your company, my throat is like crazy.
Yeah.
It's about healing and wellness, right? And so tying those together, I can understand about the vulnerability and supporting you in whatever healing you're going through. And you talked about the 3 components, right? And
Hmm.
that felt like, oh wow, like information, right? That
Yeah.
information, that if we understand that information, then and use it in a way that it supports us, right? Because being able to be with the risk and the
Mm.
uncertainty, and then having an emotional experience takes something, because we know a lot of people aren't, vulnerability doesn't come easy, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so in talking about that, I think it's great, that you have a place for people to come. And for me, it reminds me of being your true self. When you talk about vulnerability, um, you know,
Yeah.
how do you don't want to talk about your questions, but give us an experience, your storyteller of right,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what it will be like to be a part of that.
Yeah, totally. So, first and foremost, I think that I think it's important to say, depending on where you were raised and who you were raised by,
Mhm.
vulnerability is held as a weakness, right? It's, for many, we were conditioned to not share our emotions, out in public, right? It was very much like get it together. And I would
Mhm.
say, I would just like to add in this conversation, specifically men, there's an
Mhm.
expectation that, men hold it all together. Don't show them that you're sweating, right? Like really man up. That those are some things that are being taught from a very young age. And so there's a lot of unlearning that we do together in the V spot. And there's a lot of unlearning that I am navigating as I am preparing, my own episodes to really be with, like, who am I in this world and how have I operated and how have I come to this very moment? And a lot of what I discovered when I was looking was, wow, that doesn't work and that
Mhm.
doesn't work. And so
Mhm.
there's a real opportunity to set down parts of who I am, parts of my personality, my default mechanisms, my coping, my
Mhm.
beliefs about myself, right? There's a lot of beliefs that we often hold about ourselves that
Mhm.
really belong to other people. It's not
Mm.
not really ours,
Mm. Mm. That's
you know.
interesting. Yeah. Right, because we take it on as if it's ours, right? But it's
Yeah.
really not, right? And I listen to Abraham Hicks a lot, right? And
Mm,
today I heard her say, sometimes, we set these intentions for things, and when we're not getting them, we need to look at our mix of desires and beliefs. And so when
mm,
you said beliefs, it made me think about how important it is in even setting our intentions to look at what our beliefs are. And
yeah.
you kind of talked about that in the sense of even just looking at what we believe about ourselves, right?
Mm,
And the things
totally.
that we're taught, and we operate from that space. So when we talk about setting intentions, there's
Mhm,
just so much to that. Now, how did you decide to start the company and the
mhm.
name? Walk us through how you got to this point where you now have this company. I love the name of it, Intentional Healing and Wellness, and give
Thank
us an
you.
overview of what you do with that.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I just want to go back to before I go forward,
Cool.
powerful point that you highlighted around, checking into the beliefs, right? Like not
Mhm,
only the intention setting, but it's also looking at the beliefs. And I just want to call everyone forth to really look at, once you identify your beliefs,
mhm,
check into, are they actually yours? Right? Because
mm,
sometimes
mhm,
we are holding beliefs that belong to our parents or
mhm,
siblings or
mhm,
partners or
mhm,
whoever, right? And so I think that it's equally as powerful to identify them and then land on, wait, is this mine? If it
mhm,
is, great. If it's not, it's like, let me give this back to whoever and let me
mhm,
really be with, what is it for me? So I just
mhm,
wanted to share that because that came up. Yeah, so intentional healing and wellness. All right, so a little story I will tell here.
mhm,
So like I shared, background in school psychology for 14 years. I have been coaching for a little over 4 years, close to five. And we are at the height of the pandemic here in New York City. It was April of 2020. And
mhm,
my brother, my older brother, ends up in ICU with COVID.
mhm,
And so I am someone who, has a lot of training in mental health and strategies. I have a history of my own anxiety, my own depression, panic
mhm,
disorder. So I've really come to have, like, you'd speak of your spiritual toolkit. I really have come to have like a toolkit that I rely on, for all of my strategies and supports. Well, my
Mhm.
brother ends up in ICU with COVID. The world is just shutting down, or has just shut down. And I lost access to every single bit of training, tool that I once had access to. It was as if it was like wiped away.
Mhm.
And all of my stuff, for lack of better words, panic attacks, fear, overwhelm, anxiety, depression, comes raging with a vengeance. And
Mm.
I was literally, in fetal position in my bed, unsure of what was going to happen with my brother. It was very serious. Unsure of what that meant for everyone else. If it could happen to him, can it happen to the rest of my family, my friends, everyone? I'm hearing left and right. And then I'm thinking of myself.
Mm.
So I spent a couple of days in, I would call it agony, really. And I was in my
Mhm.
bedroom, just sort of like total, fetal position, worried about what next. And
Mhm.
I don't know, call it divine, but I
Mhm.
sat up in the morning on the third day
Mhm.
and literally said, you can either go about this pandemic in this way with all this uncertainty and not function, or you
Mhm.
can sit up and take every single thing that you have ever learned, every
Mhm.
tool that
Yeah.
you have access to,
Mhm.
and be intentional to create a business that you not only need, but the world needs right now too.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
was it. Intentional
Mhm.
healing and wellness was born. And I have consistently, poured into this particular business. So it is a coaching and consulting business. And people often say, well, what's the relationship with healing to coaching? Like, I don't get it.
Mhm.
And, I often share that when you are on a coaching journey and you are setting, I ask people, before I tell people the answer, I ask them, before I tell you the answer to, what is the connection with coaching and healing, let me
Mhm.
ask you a question. And the question is, have you ever set out to achieve a goal and
Mhm.
struggled to accomplish it?
Mhm.
And every single person that I've ever asked the question to, myself included, the answer is
Mhm.
yes.
Right.
And so what I then share is, it's not that you didn't want to achieve that goal. It's
Mhm.
that somewhere embedded under the layers of who you are, there's a belief or there's something that you
Mhm.
hold about yourself that is
Mhm.
like preventing you from going to where you want to go. And so the coaching process is very much designed to discover those things and then
Mhm.
revoke their power, and so
Mhm.
in that process, healing occurs,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
is the connection with the coaching and the healing.
Yeah. Mhm.
um and since I have a mental health training background, I
Mhm.
am really working hard to change the conversation of normalizing seeking out mental health support,
Mhm.
especially now, right?
Mhm.
Because going back to what we shared before about vulnerability, and depending on where you're from, it is held as a weakness. As
Mhm.
far as we have come in the conversation of mental health and mental
Mhm.
health services, we still have
Mhm.
a way to go.
Okay.
You
I
know,
like what you said about normalizing seeking mental health, making
Mm,
it okay. And as you said, we have a long way to go. And I wonder, w- is there more we could do, or what things could be done to even get us to that place where it's okay and it's normal. There's a message somewhere that people need to hear, you know?
yeah.
And you being in the mental health field, what kind of and I know that I was going to say, what kind of things can you talk about now to support people who may be struggling,
Mm,
right,
yeah.
with their mental health?
Yeah, sure. So first thing that comes to mind, I did an Instagram live. I don't know, the time is all blurry, but it's about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago.
Mhm.
And we were talking about, mental health support. And one of the things that I said, so it came up like, well, who can go for mental health support? And so I have
Mhm.
two qualifying questions that I would
Mhm.
say to somebody. Um, are you human? And if the and if the answer is yes,
Right.
then that's check.
Mhm.
And are you alive to hear this question being asked of you? And if the answer to that is yes, then you are someone right now in 2021 who is a perfect candidate for seeking out mental health support. It's not much deeper than that. We are literally living through, extraordinary times, sustained trauma on so many different levels.
So many.
And right, there's so many layers and layers and layers. And so if you are alive and if you are human, mental health support is for you. And I think that when we have the conversation as simple as that, it really highlights that it really is that basic in terms of, should I go for support?
But you know what, I just came to my mind though also, you know how in the beginning you talked about how we learn and we take beliefs from other people. That conversation around mental health has to happen really early. There has to be a community, I guess, of people who are having that conversation. Just say, and I'll say in my family, I'll use for example, right? I don't know that it's a conversation that we have all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know it's something that we talk about as openly or as here's the way. I know I talk about it a lot, but I'm talking about on a whole family level.
Yeah.
And it brought to mind when you say we get our beliefs from our family, from our parents.
Yeah.
So what we think about seeking help and mental health is what we were taught or what we learned,
Totally.
and I think people still think you have to be like really crazy or something, or really like at the edge, right?
Totally.
Right, without even looking at like this, just being happy, right? And just how do you just not be obsessed with work, like things like that, I'm just trying to think of like, and I know it's a lot deeper than that, even when you spoke about trauma, right? The trauma that we just bury deep down, and then we're still responding to it in ways that we're not sure. When we say, oh, why is this happening? But it's because of the past traumas and the way we're responding. So there's a lot to the whole mental health. I think it's one little category, and then people think, oh, that's not for me. I don't need it because I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that, yes, I would love to piggyback off of that. I think that there is a general consensus that if we are okay and we're managing, we don't need support. And I think that, it's one of these conversations of extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. Yes, you can be doing okay. What about the possibility of doing great? Feeling great? Yes, you can be happy sometimes. What about experiencing yourself as joyful a bit more often, right? I'm not going to say always, because that's an unattainable goal too.
Right.
But I think that in the conversation of mental health services, and this goes back to, the vulnerability conversation and speaking of, depending on where you were raised, who raised you, what your culture is, similar context with mental health, right? I grew up in an Italian, half Irish, half Italian, but the Italian side of my family, I would say, was very much about, you don't talk about your feelings. As a matter of fact, you don't talk about your feelings, outside of your house. Like everything was secretive, right? And so one of my come froms, I would say one of my like real foundational principles in this conversation of mental health is, we can't talk about mental health unless we're willing to talk about vulnerability and shame, because there's a big connection. Those are the pink elephants in the room, right? And so we first have to really unpack, like, okay, let's name the pink elephants. Shame is here. Vulnerability is here, right? Because depending on how we were raised, we're not supposed to be even experiencing certain emotions. There's this expectation that we be like robotic. And so once we're able to name shame and call it, okay, here it is, it's present, we're able to have the conversation in a different way, But I think that given how much progress we've made with mental health, but how much more we have to go. It's safe to say that in most rooms, talking about mental health services is awkward. There are
Mm,
people that I've had conversations with, and when they say mental health,
mhm.
they said to me, I feel uncomfortable to actually even say mental health.
Wow, yeah. So as you
Because
said, there's still a long way to go.
this, right? Like it's still this, because it's so connected to, what people often say as like crazy. But
Mhm,
when we think
mhm,
about like the human experience and our physical health, if
mhm.
we were having, let's say, headaches on a regular basis, we would have no problem to go to the doctor to express, hey, having these headaches pretty often, I don't know what this is about.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
when we are experiencing symptoms of depression,
mhm,
changes in appetite, inability to focus, insomnia, or maybe sleeping too much,
mhm,
low
mhm,
energy, sudden
mhm.
loss of interest in some of our favorite things, which again, in 2021, most people are like, check, check,
Right,
check, right?
right,
But
exactly.
when we are experiencing symptoms of depression, why are we unwilling to actually talk
That's
about
it.
it? And right.
Mhm,
And so there's a real call to action to
mhm,
check into your own feelings of it. Are you more willing to address your physical health than your mental health?
mhm,
And really look at, I think it's the World Health Organization that said there is no health without mental health.
mhm. Right, because I think that healing is a mental process, right? It's not just the outer part. You have to be mentally able to support your own healing in many, many ways, right? So it's really important, like you say, to not just take care of your physical health, but also take care of your mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's really important, we talk about families and the way we were raised. Give us a story. Let's shift and talk about your spiritual journey. Like, how did
Mm,
you grow up, and how have you progressed to what your spiritual beliefs are now?
yes. So I grew up in the Catholic Church. We were part of the Catholic Church, and went to church. I went to a Catholic high school, and so I was, very much immersed in, like conversations derivative of Catholicism for my whole, younger years.
Mhm,
Um, I would say when I got to around when yeah, I would say maybe mid college years. I was
mhm,
actually in a Jesuit college. And I
mhm,
would say somewhere around then is when I actually lost my father. My father passed away. I was 19 years old. And there was just a shift. I didn't go to church as much,
mhm,
if at all,
mhm, mhm,
And I would say that I got away from spirituality at that particular point. I was, very much like immersed in my physical experience and my emotions. And, I was working through grad school. And as I got a little bit older too, I didn't feel that I needed to be in church
mhm,
to
mhm,
experience, my faith. And I believe in a higher power.
mhm,
I haven't, forgotten about what I was raised and taught when I was younger. But I am
mhm,
someone who has grown into being, like, I am a woman who feels like I can have a spiritual moment or connection with the higher power
mhm,
here,
mhm,
at my table, like
mhm.
at a drop of a
Oh,
hat,
brother. Mhm,
Yeah. And so, spirituality is something that I am purposefully building. It's a muscle that I
mhm,
am like flexing more often than ever. What
mhm,
I've come to discover is that it looks all different ways. A lot of what
mhm,
we started talking about in the beginning, creativity,
mhm,
those channels, those practices, I find to be highly spiritual. For me.
mhm, mhm,
So the being with music in a way where I'm really able to be still and receive certain messages and kind of like connect with myself. That's
mhm.
spiritual practice. Writing and really like kind of what I feel like is receiving somewhat of like downloads in a sense, and allowing myself the practice of putting pen to paper and expressing myself
Mm-hmm.
is very much a practice. So it looks different. My spirituality is, I would say, less religious inspired
Mm-hmm.
these days,
Yeah.
and a little bit more generalized, I guess you would call it.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that your Christian beliefs, because we talk about, so if you were immersed in this all of the time, do you find that your Christian beliefs come up in situations, or yeah, that they come up in situations? Because I'm thinking about how Christianity is very restrictive and there's so many rules around that, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes for me, I was raised in the church too, and I find myself saying, "Oh, well, do I believe that now?" Right?
Mm,
Oh, does that make sense for me now? Right? And
yeah.
yeah, and find myself sometimes in conflict with that because it's such a belief that was so ingrained, right? Do you
Mm.
find yourself in moments where your Christian beliefs rise up or come into play?
Yeah, I would say in this moment, what's coming up for me most is this idea of like Catholic guilt. I don't know if, like I think about, that's what I think of. I think that's
Mhm,
at points I can find myself in certain situations, perhaps
mhm,
making certain decisions,
mhm,
perhaps not making certain decisions, living my life in a way that I would say is untraditional by nature,
mhm,
in different ways.
mhm.
And I often will experience this like questioning of self, and I'm like,
Mm,
is this the right thing to do? And that's
mhm,
where I'll find myself, questioning like, wait, is this like the Catholic guilt, like because being raised a certain way, and there
mhm,
are certain like terms and conditions, and
mhm,
whatever, just go with it.
mhm,
And by nature, I guess I would call myself somewhat of a rebel.
mhm,
I push the, limitations and question a lot. And so I would say that is probably the way that it comes up for me most in terms
mhm,
of, my day to day, who I am as a person.
mhm,
And I don't allow it to sway me, like I'm
mm,
mindful of
mhm,
it. I
mhm,
sometimes check into like, oh, this is probably bad,
mhm. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I'm able to shift and just kind of just still do what I want to do.
Mhm. Yeah, because even for me, I'm Reverend G, but when people hear Reverend, they put a whole thing on who I'm supposed to be, how
Yeah.
I'm supposed to act. And I trip up sometimes too, based on my Christian beliefs about what a reverend is. And I'm not that, right? So
Mm,
then I'm
yeah.
tripping, right? Like you
Yeah.
said about, wow. But over time now, I've come to just step into just who I am. And what is it?
Mm,
Reverend G, it's a title. Whoever I am will always come through, right?
yeah.
So it's that whole idea around, as we were saying, the beliefs that we form based on the way who our parents were,
Mm,
family we were
oh,
in, and then to see how they come up in life, right? And for
yeah.
me, I've studied all religions at this point, right?
Mm,
And I can know the differences, see the differences, but still that rooted in that Christianity, it still creeps up, right?
yeah.
And as
Yeah.
you said,
For
being
real.
aware, right?
That's the piece, right? That's the piece. Because I think that's so powerful, and I'm so happy you brought that up, because I do believe that who we are and how we grew up and our experiences and whoever raised us, like the belief system and the values and all of it, right? Our morals, all of that absolutely presents all throughout our life. And I think the powerful piece that you highlighted is the awareness. Are we aware that we're interacting with the world, with each other, with ourselves through the lens of our experiences? Because as this is so funny because it's not a mistake at all. Like, this is something that was actually I wrote in my podcast episode that's coming out Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
this idea of like, while we are unique and we each have our own beliefs and feelings and thoughts, right? We
Mm-hmm.
didn't come to be who we are today on our own.
Mm.
And we were very much influenced by whatever, family, friends, all of it, right? It keep going, all different people. And so to be able to really pause and reflect and in real time, right? Because all this is happening in real time as we're navigating our lives. To be able to like pause and be aware to say, wait, am I interacting with myself, with the world, with whoever in this moment? Because this is like what's true for me, or am I in reaction as a result of maybe what I witnessed as a young person, or what I think is the way to handle, you know? And so at any given point, I always joke, but I'm so serious about it. I'm like, if anybody sees inside my mind at any given moment, they would be like, what is going on? Because there's so much happening in real time, you know, in real time. So I love that you highlighted that.
I like doing affirmations, and I had an affirmation that I used to say that the result doesn't have to be the way it was in the past. This same situation doesn't have to end up the same way, right? And that's what we tend to, when something comes, we think it's going to be the same way, but it doesn't, you know. And one of the things, so we did momentum together. I always tell people what momentum is, right? And it was such a powerful experience to still, that I stay connected, and I know you stay connected, and we still use it. What I love about it is I get to support others and myself, right? So that's the best part of it, is each time that I participate in an effort to coach and support, I really get to support myself, and I love being in the community, right? So I wanted you to talk more about, you have mentioned it briefly, about the consciousness,
excuse me, the conscious conversations.
Conscious conversations, right? I mean, that just sparked something in my mind. So talk more about that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry, I have the little tickle happening too. So conscious I'm like, is it an allergy thing? I'm sorry. So yeah, so okay, I launched Intentional Healing and Wellness, and one of the first like offerings was a free offering that was held on Zoom every Tuesday. And it's called the Conscious Conversation Series. And so the idea is, you know, I speak of this often too. Excuse me, time does not heal all wounds. You know, that I disagree with that. I think that it is, you know, intention and consistency and awareness that has healing occur. And so I decided to launch the Conscious Conversation series as a way of hosting a conversation, interactive, in Zoom, where I would either myself or have someone join me as a co-host, have a topic and share it out with the virtual room, right? And hear from different people about different, whatever their experiences and what comes up for them. And, you know, really shine some light on points that would forward, you know, that would evoke introspection, really have people pause and be with like, how does it show up for me? You know, and the call to action was always, you know, of course, the conversation started right there in the Zoom room. And then the invitation was to, you know, be with the work in your life after the call is over to see what comes up. And so I always say, I believe that, you know, conscious conversations are very powerful, because once we have the conversation, we can't pretend the conversation didn't happen. And so it was really designed to, you know, inspire and promote healing, you know, individually and collectively. And it's been great. I mean, we've looked at so many different topics, you know, from the power of spontaneity, you know, to intuition and everything in between, you know, emotional intelligence, our like shadow work, being with the parts of ourselves that are not all hearts and roses, the parts that we don't want to like lead with, but they're part of who we are. And so we get to really embrace all of us. And
Wonderful.
grieving, what does grief look
Mm,
like in 2020?
mm,
How we are experiencing sustained trauma. And so there's been, some sexy. Listen, the conversation about sexy too. Healing
yeah,
is sexy. It doesn't have to be all tears
mm.
and sobbing. And yes, it can be.
And
And
healing too also there are many areas of healing. It's not
mhm,
just, people
totally.
sometimes think of physical healing. There's emotional
Yeah,
healing. There's so many uh, places
totally.
and that we can heal things in our lives, right? I always think about
Absolutely.
but Louise Hay wrote the book You Can Heal Your Life, right? And what she
Hmm.
talks about are
Love that book.
the metaphysical reasons for disease, right? And the way you're
Yeah.
thinking, right? And I would always say, and I used to carry this book around. When I get on a kick, I get on a kick, right?
Yeah.
So I would
I
always
have it.
have
I know
this.
the kick. I know the kick. I have the book.
Yeah, and so if anybody would tell me anything, I would send them right there, and they were like, "No, no, no, no." But what I would always have to explain, at some point in your life, this is really happening. And one,
Yeah.
you just can't say overall. You have to really look at what part of your life are you really worrying, right? And
Yeah.
what part of your life are you not loving yourself? How does that manifest for you? Because people are reading and immediately go, no, no, but it's so true. I always found
Yeah.
that when I referred to that book, I could heal a certain part, and it's broken down like that, healing
Yeah.
of the fear, the worry, right, and replacing it with the love and the knowing. So
Totally.
I think the point is that we can heal in so many ways, so many aspects of who we are. There are many, many areas where we could heal.
Yeah, and I think I love that you brought that up. And I think, it gets a bad rep. I think healing, you hear healing, and there's
And
this
yes,
idea that, right,
yeah,
something is broken,
well, yeah,
something is damaged,
exactly, yeah,
something is painful and
yeah,
consisting of trauma. But
yeah.
no, not necessarily.
Mm,
Again, as long as we are alive and we're
mhm,
navigating this life,
mhm,
there are things from 5-minute conversations from an hour ago that may warrant like a level of healing.
mhm,
There are
mhm,
different aspects of. So I hold it as healing as an awareness, as
mhm.
navigating life in a conscious way.
Okay.
Committed
Mhm,
to really like experiencing your life from through a lens of being open, right? To really look at, who are we and how are we navigating and what comes up for us, and allowing the feelings, allowing the emotions to come through. And I love that you brought up that book, because I think it speaks so powerfully to our emotions and unexpressed feelings and thoughts when held in
mhm,
manifest in the physical body in different ways, and so that
mhm.
book is a powerful way of actually reverse engineering the process. Like, so let's start with the physical ailments and look at
Mhm,
what's going on emotionally that is causing
exactly.
it. And that's
Mhm.
so right, that's going to potential root, as opposed to, treating like surface. So I think I love that you brought that up. Great book.
Exactly. A great
Love that.
way. And as we're talking about, and I thought of it because you're talking about healing, and as a part of, it's like intentional healing, right? So do you have like a program in place, or how is your coaching set up for
Yeah. So
people that
yeah. So two things. One, the intentionality is like, yeah, healing on purpose, right? Because I think
mm,
healing can happen accidentally. We could be in the presence of people who have certain conversations. We can experience perhaps whatever, a television show, a book, whatever, and we can be inspired, or something about it could tap into a piece of us where we experience healing, right? And I would say that's like accidental. And then there is this conscious decision to set forth on a journey to accomplish whatever, right? And it's never about the goal. The goal is the goal, but it's who we become in the process of achieving the goal that I think is the magic. And so my coaching is either one-to-one or generally 8 weeks or 12 weeks. And so that's for somebody who has an idea of like wanting to really kind of be on their journey and work on their particular things. So that looks different for everybody, you know, what people want to work on. And then I wrote 3 different coaching programs. There's a Mira, which is a 4-week program, which is very much, it's like a deep, intensive into self, you know, to really like look at the person in the mirror. And so each week we look at a different topic, and really it's all about you. I mean, it's all about you anyway if you choose into coaching, but that one's like, I would say, very inward. And then there's the V spot, which is the vulnerability spot. And so we talk about, you know, what is vulnerability for you? Because it's very individualized. And we look at shame, and we look at trust, and we look at joy, which is said to be one of the most vulnerable emotions we can experience. And so love, you know, so that's what that program is about. And then Intentionally Me is a 6-week program that's really designed to look at the major quadrants of your life. So relationships and career and, you know, education, your wellness, like each week has a different theme. And we, by way of group coaching, look at, you know, where are you now and where are you looking to go? And so those are 3 of the program. That's really designed for someone who really enjoys being, learning in community, you know, learning about themselves in community, having different people's perspectives shared. And so right now, those are the different ways of choosing into the coaching, you know, with me.
With you. Wow, that sounds really good. I like the part about being intentional, right? So
Yeah.
hence in the title, right? And then the wellness part, or do you talk about different wellness practices, or how do you incorporate that into, because it's a main part of the title?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say it's incorporated into all of my work, in that I'm regularly, you know, with my mental health background. And I actually went back to school for the credits that I needed to be a mental health counselor. So, you know, therapy, private practice is on deck, and that's coming soon. But it's always, wellness is always infused into all of the work that I do, you know, because I think that when we are engaging in conversations like this, you know, it's a form of wellness. It's a form of being in tune to the world around us and what is best for us, what will forward us. And so when I speak of wellness, I do speak of it in terms of like a balanced approach. So I often encourage anyone to envision a tripod, and you know how a tripod has 3 legs, and in order for it to stay standing, those 3 legs have to be in balance. And so I speak of wellness as a tripod, mind, body, and soul, and really invite people to check into your tripod. Is there one leg that is a little bit weaker than another? Because you know what's going to happen, the tripod's going to tip. And so where do you get to be intentional and put certain practices in place that will have your tripod be in balance, you know, so that it stands. And so that looks different for everybody.
Yeah, it does. Because at a point I was doing wellness retreats where we would have a day where we would bring all the practitioners in, and the theme was mind, body, and spirit, right? Relax, refresh, and rejuvenate. And it's
Okay.
about the three things. All of those things go together to support you in being your best self, and that's what
Absolutely.
I think all of us, when I think, and I know that all we really want to do is be happy. That's what everything that we're doing is, to find some joy and to be happy, right? So, in making sure that we check in to all of
Yeah.
those, the mind, the body, and the spirit. And as you said, having that balance between the three can
Yeah.
support us in our journey to wellness, because it is a journey. I think about
Totally.
as we age, as we just
Hmm.
keep going through life, there are different things that come up, and different
Yeah.
ways that we have to shift to take care of ourselves, right? Another
Absolutely.
thing that what I like about the whole thing too is, when I believe that you are where you eat. So food and
Mm.
eating for me is just so important to wellness, right? Because
Yeah.
I think that food is it, right? We
Mm.
can probably have a whole
Yeah.
long
That's a whole
conversation,
that's a
right?
whole other conversation. For sure. Totally.
Around eating, but the thing, I know you had talked about your spiritual practices, but share with us now what would be your top three, and why you would choose those as your top three. What do they do for you?
So
This is
top
for
three.
the toolkit, right? I'm always saying, we share our spiritual practices, and you could create your own spiritual toolkit, because some of the things that
Yeah.
we talk about, and it's personal for everybody. What's good for you may not be for me. I meditate every day, but some people say, oh, that's not what they can do. So they're just
Yeah.
so, there's like all forms of spiritual practices.
Yeah. Yeah. So top three. I would say my top three. One is referred to as, it's a writing activity, and it's referred to as dumping.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's literally, it could be, you select the time, generally 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and
Mhm.
it's literally a start, and you just put, you like a timer, and
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
really are just dumping from like your consciousness, anything, or really even unconscious thoughts.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
not about grammar, it's not about spelling, it's not about all the writing
Mhm.
technicalities. It's really a way of releasing. And
Mm.
so it's been super helpful. And and if you're not sure what to write, you could even be writing. I'm not sure what to write
Okay.
right now,
Okay.
but
Right.
I'm
I was
writing
just
for the
thinking
power.
about, is a download.
Yeah,
Is there a prompt,
that's
or it's
it.
just like whatever? Just sit down and
Whatever.
start writing. Whatever you're thinking about, just download it. Just,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
And allow for it to like come to and through, I would
Mhm.
say.
Mhm.
And thereby there's a release. So that's been a tool that has helped me to really
Mm. Haven't heard
like plug in a
of.
sense.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
would say music. You say meditation. I don't call it meditation, but it really is meditation by way of
Mhm.
music. And
Mhm.
so I would say, if I landed on an artist in this particular moment, Londrell is an artist that I would encourage for music folks to check out.
Mhm.
He has a lot of pieces that are meditation pieces,
What's the
by
name
nature.
again? Landrell, you said?
Londrell, yeah, it's Londrelle. I could send you a couple of things when we
Okay.
get
I'd
off of
like to
here so
check
that
that
you
out.
have it.
Mhm.
Um, Super powerful. It's
Mhm.
very healing. And so
Mhm.
sometimes it's literally, it could be a song. And there are some weeks where I'm having a week and it could be the album, and I can go
Mm.
like really be with like quieting out the rest of the noise, and the
Mhm.
messages and the lyrics you'll experience are
Mhm.
profound. So I would say
Mm.
meditation by way of music.
Yeah,
And
that's nice. Yeah.
the other I would say is walking long distance,
Mm.
like meditative walks.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nature.
Mindfulness, because I was going to say earlier, I was going to mention mindfulness as a meditation practice,
Mhm,
right? And I
totally.
like that you said the walks. right? The
Yeah.
long walks. Or,
Yeah. So like tuning in, what sounds am I hearing? What am I
mm,
smelling? What am I
mm,
how does the air feel? It's really to
mm,
connect because I'm someone like I shared that struggled with anxiety. So getting very present,
mm,
is a way of really supporting the mind to chill and instead of like being forward thinking, what if, what's gonna happen, blah, blah, blah. It's a way to
mhm,
come back to
mhm,
what am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I
mhm,
listening? All of the senses,
mhm,
using the five senses to ground. And I often do that on my walks. It's
mhm, mhm,
nature. So if I am able, I'm somebody who will find my way to water. I'm a
mhm,
huge supporter of nature. So
mhm,
sunsets, nature, trees, foliage, all that good stuff. That's a
mhm.
very spiritual practice for me to be purposeful about spending time outdoors.
Mhm. I always talk about consistency is
Mm,
really, really important. And it
totally.
came to mind when you were saying how how you have to ground, how you have to keep yourself grounded so you don't have the anxiety attacks. So you have to be consistent in the practices that you do and everything about finding something that you can do consistently that will support you, right? So
Yeah.
that I really do understand the whole thing of being able to be in touch with what you need, right? And
Yeah.
finding those practices that help you. And I like the idea that you're a photographer too, because somehow I think I might be a photographer. No, I say I might be, but I
Mm,
haven't really explored it. I
yeah.
take my
Try it
little
out.
camera, right? I take
Yeah.
pictures, right? But there's something about
Mm,
what you see in the camera and it's just a connection between you
totally.
know what's happening and what you see the whole photography thing because I'm always amazed that I look through and I take the nah, I'm doing like this, right? But you take the
Yeah.
shot right and then
Yeah.
what you really see is like whoa, what you saw and
Yeah.
what you see is so different. So I'm into sunset, so everywhere I
Me
go
too.
I just
Love.
take beautiful sunsets, and I
So
just love
therapeutic.
that. So that's something I like photography too.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's something just to for the folks listening. Two things that come to mind that I think are powerful in this moment. I want to share a tool that may support for anybody who's listening. I know that anxiety is a big thing right now, and
mhm,
so anxiety is pretty much the fact that we are worried about the future, right? We're
yeah,
engaged in what if. What if this happens?
mhm,
What if that happens? What if, it's
mhm,
what if, what if, what if? And so we're running
mhm,
down to the worst case scenarios. And so
mhm,
a strategy to support that is to shift from what if thinking to what is thinking. So you want to
like
check in,
get present, right?
get
That's what
present.
as you were
What it
saying
right?
is right.
What is happening? I am
Mhm,
like I am safe. I am home.
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
comfortable. I'm in the like and really bring yourself to the moment. And so for all of
mhm,
my warriors who are tuning in or catching the playback at some point, really catch yourself when you start to do, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? And we catastrophize,
mhm.
reel it into the what, with the what
What is
is.
now?
So I think that that's like a very like an easy tool to add to the toolkit. And then the
Exactly.
other thing I just wanted to hit on pertaining, and you made me think of it, photography, is this
Mhm,
idea of just as photographers set up a shoot, right, to
mhm,
capture a moment, we too, even though we may not have no photography experience, have the ability to use intention to set up our life in such a way that if we take a snapshot, what are we experiencing in that snapshot? Is it what we want to experience? Is it what we desire? Is it
mhm,
something that we're going to look back and be like the sunset, like, oh, wow, be with, or
mhm,
is it something that we're not going to want? Is it going to be a photo that you're going to want to toss? And I think that
mhm.
if we hold that imagery, like as you think about your life, it can support in shifting and choosing different scenes that you like, be your own director,
Mhm.
and
Of
think
your
about
own
like,
movie of your life,
yeah,
right?
and think about the
Mhm,
photographs of your life. If at any point
mhm.
in time today a snapshot was taken, is that going to be a photograph that you treasure? No, get rid of
Mhm.
then change the scene, switch it up, set it, your
Mm.
life up with intention in a way that when the
Mhm.
photograph is taken, you would look back the way we experienced the sunsets, like, oh, look how
Wow.
beautiful that
Yeah.
was. And we have that power, right?
Mhm.
It's our decision. Do we design our day, or do we let the day happen to us? So the
That's
call to
those
action is
intentions. Setting the
design,
intention.
yes,
Right,
design the
exactly.
day,
Design
design
your
the day.
day. So we're up, so our time is flying away. So let people know
Yes.
how they can reach you, Andrea.
Yes. I can be found Intentional Healing and Wellness on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I can also, the V Spot podcast is available on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify,
Mm.
and also www.intentionalhealingandwellness.com. That has more information about the overview of like who I am, the work that I do, what options are available, and how you can contact me. So, join the intentional healing and wellness community. I absolutely do believe that it is a movement. It is something that in 2021 and beyond, um, we really want to tap into,
Mhm.
and create the experience that we deserve to have and want to have. So I would love to have you be part of the community. And thank
Yes.
you, thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you for this opportunity. It's been an honor, a privilege. I'm grateful to see you and share space in this way. It has been far too long. I'll
Yes.
say that, far
You're
too long.
great. So thank you for showing up, and I will definitely be in touch so we can
Perfect.
continue the conversation.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right. Have
you.
a great
Thank
day.
you.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
So thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. And I'm here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. live on WEMS Radio. We're on Facebook, we're on the WEMS app, we're on Twitch, and on YouTube. You can also find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Granetta Mason, on Instagram as Rev Granetta. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Reverend Granetta Mason. So I'd like to leave you today with the thought of what intentions are you setting for your life? And what things support you in reaching those intentions? I'm Reverend G, and I will see you again next week right here at 8 p.m. Have a great, great week.